We start episode 4 still in the midst of Luthen and Cassian's chaotic escape. The latter has just barely survived a corporate raid, lost his cover and been plucked out of the fire by a stranger who knows far too much about him. As Aldhani opens, the dust hasn't settled yet, literally. Luthen's Haulcraft is still punching through Ferrix's atmosphere, the ship rattling the turbulence. Cassian is bleeding, dizzy, asking the one question he's probably asked the most in his life: is anyone behind us? Luthen doesn't answer, he just says set for Aldhani. The ship's AI confirms coordinates in that smooth voice, and Cassian suddenly realizes this vessel can do something he's never seen before. A Fondor Haulcraft, he knows them, he's flown them, but this one leaps into hyperspace in seconds and moves so fast and clean it makes him lurch back a bit, wide-eyed, questioning what magic lays behind this deceptively impressive ship. His physical disorientation as the ship jumps matches his emotional disorientation. He's being pulled into something faster than his internal processing can deal with, and that's where the real scene begins, because the turbulence stops, but the pressure does not. Luthen's first words after stabilizing the ship aren't warm or even explanatory. They're, "You're bleeding on my floor, fix your arm." It's classic Luthen, pragmatic, unsentimental and commanding. It's a power play but disguised as medical advice. In fact, he's been doing it all the way through the scene. He's getting Cassian used to obeying instructions. Grab the blue one, hold on, do it now. And Cassian's been doing as he's been told, and the one time he didn't, he suffered for it. Then comes the fork in the road. Luthen reminds Cassian why he's alive and lays out his options. He can be dropped somewhere to start running again. He can come along and help with something important, or if he really wants, he can kill Luthen and steal the ship. Kill me, run or join, those are your choices. This has some echoes to the narrow choices presented in my video on the authoritarian pitch. Luthen knows Cassian only has one choice. Running isn't a plan with legs. We can be pretty sure Luthen won't risk leaving him somewhere when he could just as soon knock him out and throw him out the airlock, and maybe Cassian knows that too. And taking the ship? Luthen knows he won't. Given the backstory I've evidenced, he's likely to have probed how cutthroat or merciless Cassian is, whether he has a code, whether he's a good man, in his discussions with Bix. And of course Cyril. Luthen wouldn't have cared if Cassian had killed him, even though I think it wasn't a serious instruction, but it's informative that he didn't, and I think they've bonded a little bit too, or Cassian has at least, during this escape. I really don't think Luthen believes he's in danger here. Plus, the act of speaking it has a couple of psychological effects. If you're planning on killing someone and they voice it, there's a kind of, "I don't want to now, you've made it all icky." Violence, when it lingers as subtext, feels sharp and alive. It belongs to the aggressor, private and potent, a fantasy. But once spoken aloud, it curdles. The secrecy is gone, the surprise is gone, the imagined control is gone. What felt like power a moment ago now feels exposed, almost embarrassing. Luthen voicing it so calmly makes it sound banal. Secondly, it's intimidating as fuck. If someone calmly suggests you try, and all you know of that person is they're smart and competent and always prepared, and oh yeah, you're flying in a spacecraft with insane capabilities, you'd have to be crazy to actually go for it. Cassian probably realizes this AI may be armed with some internal defense systems, if he gets aggro, and at the very least the ship will not let him fly it. "You have killed my owner. Life support off. Venting atmosphere. Don't worry, you won't suffocate to death. You'll freeze first." Cassian bristles. He doesn't need Luthen to steal. And when Luthen needles him about how well he's doing on his own, Cassian flinches and sulkily requests to be dropped off, hurt by Luthen's comment. It's pure defensiveness. Cassian's hurt pride won't let him be recruited so easily. But Luthen is good at this game. He reframes instantly. And do what? Continue as you are? Whether you steal plasma coils or 20 million credits, the Empire will hang you with the same rope. I'm offering you everything you want, all at once. That's the pivot. Luthen's recruitment technique is a masterclass in spycraft. He offers both ideology and money, but keeps them balanced. One on its own wouldn't work. Cassian is too cynical for lofty speeches and too proud to be bought cheap. But combined, put a real stick in the eye of the Empire and get paid for it? That's the magic formula. Cassian scoffs, claims it's all useless. Better to live, eat, sleep, do what you want. He insists Luthen doesn't know him, and then crucially he reaches for his trump card, Mimban. I fought in Mimban when I was 16, 2 years of it straight out of prison into the mud. I'm one of 50 that survived, and who did it turn out we were fighting? Ourselves. This is Cassian's self-mythology. He's trying to slam the door on Luthen by saying, you don't know the horror I've seen, don't talk to me about causes, I've lived through them and they're all lies. But here's the thing Luthen does know, he corrects him. You were on the ground in Mimban for 6 months, you came in as a cook, you lived because you ran. And this is where many viewers misunderstand the exchange. The word cook is often taken as an insult, as if Luthen is trivializing the trauma, but I don't think that's what he's doing. Cassian's trauma is real, it was horrible there, and when things are that bad you don't really have cooks and mechanics, everyone's a soldier or a field medic. He undoubtedly lost a lot of newly acquired friends and brothers there, and Luthen knows Cassian's trauma is real. So if cook really was meant as a minimization of what Cassian went through, this conversation would not have ended with a deal. We've actually seen Mimban before in Solo, a Star Wars story. It's a swamp planet, perpetually foggy and wet, where the Empire threw conscripts into a trench war against local resistance. Han Solo himself was dumped there in the mud as a punishment posting. It looks more like the Somme than Star Wars. So Cassian's exaggerating his endurance. He wants to sound like a hardened veteran who's seen too much to care. But Luthen's correction doesn't lessen the horror, it's factual. It reminds us that even 6 months, even as a supposedly supportive role, was enough to scar Cassian for life. The line isn't dismissive, it's diagnostic. Without being insulting, it's an effective way to diffuse some of Cassian's cynicism. When Luthen adds you lived because you ran, that's the only real sting, is both a criticism and a compliment, and a theme in Cassian's life. It means Cassian's defining trait isn't bravery or loyalty, it's survival instinct. He doesn't die for undeserving causes, he doesn't hold the line unless he was to potentially find something worth that. He finds a way to survive, and Luthen is telling him, that's why I want you. He sees Cassian's cynicism not as a flaw but as a resource. One of many reasons Cassian hates the Empire is because he's been forced to fight their pointless wars. He distrusts causes because he thinks they always collapse into betrayal, but beneath that cynicism is rage, and Luthen imagines, his word, that when that moment comes, Cassian will die fighting these bastards no matter what he tells himself now. The only question is whether he does it piecemeal, wasting his life in scraps, or whether he gives it all at once for something real. That's the full pitch, not just 200,000 credits, not just revenge, purpose. Notice how the roles have flipped since Ferrix. In that industrial hall, it was Cassian doing the selling, trying to convince Luthen to buy his stolen Starpath unit. Luthen was poking holes, asking skeptical questions, controlling the negotiation, and Luthen won that round. He walked away with Cassian. Now here on the Haulcraft it's reversed. Luthen's the one selling and Cassian's the skeptic, scornful and resistant. And once again Luthen wins, because Luthen is better at this game from either side of the table. Luthen rules this encounter with the quiet certainty of someone who already knows the outcome. He commands the room, the ship, the pace of the conversation, and even Cassian's body, instructing him where to look, what to drink, how to heal. He frames choice as a trap. Every road leads back to him. Run and die, kill me and fail, or join and live. He interprets Cassian's past with more authority than Cassian himself, cutting through bravado with clinical precision. He defines Cassian by his flight and then recasts that instinct as a weapon he alone can sharpen. This too is authoritarianism of a particular kind, not the grand systemic kind of empires and bureaus, but a more intimate species. Luthen's authority is paternal, presenting coercion as care. It is pragmatic, built on competence and foreknowledge. And it's interpretive, claiming the right to tell Cassian who he is and what he will become. He does not demand obedience for its own sake, but he bends Cassian's will all the same. Luthen is an instrumental authoritarian. He recruits Cassian by mirroring the methods of authoritarian power, controlling environment, narrowing choices, defining identity. He's not Palpatine, but he uses similar structures of coercion, just inverted toward rebellion. Everything Luthen does in this scene is a manipulation to get control of Cassian. And I think Cassian kind of enjoys following orders despite his dislike of authority. What he resists is the weightless command of fools and tyrants. When someone shows competence, when they see further than he can and speak with clarity, he bends almost willingly. On Canary, he admired the girl who led so effectively. And now, bleeding on Luthen's ship, he finds a strange comfort in another voice that cuts through the noise. Cassian is not a leader, not yet. He is a man who craves order in the chaos, if only he can trust the hand that gives it. The scene ends with the real hook, the job. 5 days, big stakes, big danger, prepped team, good plan. You survive and deliver, I'll give you 200,000. And when Cassian finally asks what they'll be stealing, Luthen drops it like a hammer. The quarterly payroll for an entire Imperial sector. That's the hero music cue moment, the reveal that shifts everything. This isn't just a theft. It's not a trinket or a plasma coil or a little survival money on the side, it's the kind of strike that proves the Empire can bleed. Cassian is trying to protect his cynicism, to keep himself from being pulled into another cause. Luthen is carefully dismantling that cynicism, piece by piece, not by denying Cassian's trauma, but by reframing it. The offer, money, and meaning in one package is perfectly calibrated to break through Cassian's defenses. The turbulence has stopped, but the real destabilization has only just begun. Cassian thought he'd escaped Ferrix with just his skin. Instead, he's being recruited into something far larger and propelled into hyperspace faster than he's ready for. But despite spending the entire scene scoffing at Luthen, he's already finding rebellion impossible to resist. We don't just meet a new location next, we meet a thought style. The ISB boardroom is a machine that converts politics into symptoms. What looks like a staff meeting is actually an indoctrination ritual, a live demonstration of how an Imperial intelligence officer must speak in order to be considered sane. The scene's engine is Partagaz's pedagogy. He never questions to learn, he asks to measure worthiness. Where would you target these new resources isn't really about Rael at all, it's a test of belonging. Give the wrong kind of answer, one lacking specifics, and you've marked yourself as an outsider. There's a word for this sort of test, a shibboleth, a signal phrase that separates who's inside the group and who isn't. Then he springs the key line, security is an illusion, we are healthcare providers. It's a genius piece of authoritarian reframing because it empties conflict of meaning. Sickness doesn't negotiate, sickness doesn't have grievances, sickness doesn't vote, sickness gets managed. The metaphor strips dissent of its politics and therefore any claim to an argument. Once you accept that frame, every treatment becomes mercy. Cutting is care. The ISB are the Empire's thought police, but not in the Orwellian sense of jackboots and midnight knocks. Their terror is quieter. They don't storm into your home, they storm into your language. They turn imprisonment into detention estimates, exile into storage issues, and riot into an interruption of service. They police interpretation itself, deciding what counts as sickness and what counts as cure. In this world, ideology doesn't arrive with a truncheon, it arrives as a memo. Case, Rael. Symptoms, erosion of local authority, rising detentions. Intervention, targeted surveillance with measurable outcomes. Case, Arvala 6. Symptoms, displaced persons, storage issues. Intervention, a memo, lagging. The language is a disinfectant. It removes blood and leaves paperwork. To quote Mosk, once the ISB is done, there's nothing to see here. That's why Partagaz crushes Legret's deflection. In the ISB's worldview, pushing responsibility downward, blaming some local official or waiting on their report is weakness, like letting the infection spread. Pulling responsibility upward, owning the problem, claiming it as yours to solve, is strength. That's the act of cure. Hence the public reassignment. Partagaz undertakes emergency bureaucratic surgery on the spot. He amputates a task to save the body. Dedra's moment is deliberately tricky. She gives the mission statement, collect intelligence, provide analysis, conduct covert action, and Partagaz calls it wrong because it's right. The text is insufficient, only the metaphor aligns you with the faith. The test is not whether you memorized the rulebook, it's whether you've internalized the diagnostic lens. Dedra passes on hunger but fails on tone. Partagaz clocks both. We do too, ambition like a scalpel, currently sheathed. The scene's black joke is that everyone speaks as though they're reducing ambiguity, but the effect is just to inflate denial. Detention estimates, storage issues, added protection requests. These euphemisms are the Empire's control levers. They don't just soften the reality, they make it steerable. If you can reframe arrests as detention estimates and camps as storage issues, you can move them along a workflow. The Empire doesn't run on fear alone, it runs on interfaces that make fear legible to a dashboard. Ferrix slots in perfectly. Blevin calls a riot trouble, tallies the dead-like line items, tags a Starpath unit as recovered inventory. The boardroom doesn't experience Ferrix as the moral event that it was, it experiences it as a kind of throughput disturbance. That's the pathology lens doing its work. No causes, only symptoms. Because you don't argue with a symptom, you suppress it and log the time to resolution. Underneath the doctrine, there's also a game being played, Partagaz's personnel politics. He keeps the table unstable on purpose. Praise is a flicker, punishment is public, ownership is a currency. Reassign a memo here, assign Ferrix there. The effect is engineered rivalry. You want officers looking outward at germs, not inward at solidarity. If they're competing for cases, they won't build coalitions. If they're busy passing purity tests, they won't unite against Partagaz or even ask why the patient is always the populace. If you want the scene's thesis in a sentence, the ISB is not the Empire's fist, it's the Empire's diagnostic software. Fists break, software scales. Fists need an enemy in front of them, software needs categories to sort and file. Fists win battles, software makes battles look like routine maintenance. That's why Partagaz doesn't ask for loyalty, he asks for specifics. Specifics are the unit tests of belief. The ability to provide detailed, actionable answers is how you prove your ideological alignment. The boardroom is an instrument. It cleans language until it can be used. It cleans people until they can be moved. It cleans conscience until it can't feel. The scene ends on a name that should clang like a bell for anyone fluent in Star Wars history: Scarif. A junior officer, young, mentions it with the blandness of a shipping report, because that's all it is. There's an increase in construction shipments going to Scarif, and then hard cut. For most viewers it passes without friction, just another place name in a galaxy stuffed with them, but for anyone steeped in the lore, it's jarring. We saw it in Rogue One. That's not a minor detail, it's seismic. And yet the show cuts away as if it was nothing. That choice is deliberate. Andor refuses to underline its own foreshadowing. It withholds the reaction shot, the music cue, the indulgent pause. The biggest project in the Empire's history is treated like a shipping lane, and we're forced to register the enormity of it without help. Casual watchers absorb it as colour, veterans get the itch of something unfinished. Wait, Scarif? That's Scarif? Go back! And the cut denies you that resolution. You don't get to linger, you carry that unease forward. That's the ISB worldview in action. To them, Scarif isn't a horror, it isn't treated as an achievement. It's a logistics item, a line on a chart. Treating it mundanely is exactly how authoritarian systems hide their worst projects, not through secrecy, through banality. If Apocalypse can be reframed as admin, then no one operating within the machine has to feel its weight. That's why the cut matters. The edit refuses catharsis. We're moving on. The next case, the next symptom, the next task. It teaches us the rhythm of this institution, endless, bureaucratic and devoid of moral punctuation. Authoritarian systems don't hide their worst projects, they drown them in normalcy. Stay tuned at the end of the video for a channel future update and a preview of my Babylon 5 content.
Are you giving me a choice here?
Yeah. The camera finds Cassian Andor with a razor in hand. He draws the blade across his face, erasing stubble, erasing identity, erasing the man who killed 2 corporate security guards on Orlana 1. He's demolishing his old self. By the time Luthen Rael enters and says think of a name, Cassian has already begun the work of disappearing. While this seems like a ritual he knows well how to disappear, on this occasion it's clearly Luthen that has instructed the change of appearance. You can't be an Imperial Air Force squaddy with a beard and moustache, even one as glorious as Cassian's. When Cassian calls himself Clem, he doesn't just pick a name, he exhumes one. As we know, it's the name of his adoptive father, hanged by the Empire. Carrying it into danger is both disguise and memorial. I also wonder if there's an element of Cassian's compartmentalization here. Luthen knows of Clem, there is no new information for him in going with this name. Outside the ship, the landscape of Aldhani stretches vast and unforgiving. It's the kind of terrain that breaks those who can't endure it. Vel Sartha and her team have been here for 5 months, eating roots and sleeping on rocks, and they've become like the land itself, hard, unyielding, shaped by deprivation. This is what rebellion looks like when you strip away the mythology, cold mountains and empty bellies and the slow erosion of everything comfortable about being human. The landscape itself is both a promise and a threat. This is beautiful, but it's hard. Which is exactly what Luthen is about to teach Vel about rebellion. Before he leaves, Luthen gives Cassian a trinket which serves 3 purposes: down payment, symbol, and leash. This kind of reminds me of the trope of usually women in historical fiction giving important personal tokens to men as a way of telling fate their man must be allowed to return from a war or dangerous journey. But if you believe it's personally important to Luthen in the way he makes out, you haven't been grasping Luthen. See, Cassian thinks it's his leash. He expresses skepticism, but Luthen will want to meet to cough up 200k in return for a 50k item. He thinks that when the mission's done, this guy's going to vanish. But by repeating that he wants it back, Luthen successfully negates this concern by giving the impression it means more to him than the money. Cassian thinks he has leverage. Of course, the irony is Cassian is the one in the dog collar here, being yanked back to Master after doing a trick. The way Luthen ends the scene is masterful. He uses a little code switching here, some linguistic mirroring, a well-known manipulation technique. Remember this?
I'm giving you my word.
For someone like Luthen, even if he had been buying the box, Cassian's word is meaningless.
If that's not enough.
That works for low-level deals with folks you'll run into again, and that's about it. But that doesn't stop Luthen using Cassian's own code, his own language, against him, saying,
Giving you my word.
With a finality that is only underscored by him marching purposefully out of the shuttle in a way that says this conversation is over. Cassian's convinced, like he had any choice. Outside, Vel approaches, and what happens is another masterclass in coercive choice architecture. A few times with Cassian we've seen Luthen give the illusion of choice where there wasn't really one. We've just seen it again, and now we'll see it with Vel. Of course she resists. Her and her team have been here for months, have sacrificed comfort and safety and normalcy. They have meant something by their suffering. The sudden insertion of a mercenary 3 days before the mission doesn't just create operational problems, it devalues the currency of sacrifice itself. If skill can be bought, if Luthen can simply rent competence when ideology proves insufficient, then what's the point in eating rocks or whatever they've been doing? Vel isn't arguing tactics when she yells about her team's deprivation. She's arguing meaning. She's arguing moral purity. And Luthen, with perfect tactical clarity, refuses to engage the emotional content of her objection. You're wasting energy, he says, which is both dismissive and accurate. He doesn't defend Cassian's motivations or try to frame him as secretly sympathetic. He restates the operational reality.
Pilot, he can shoot, he can lie.
The mission needs these capabilities. Vel's feelings about purity and sacrifice are irrelevant to probability calculations.
Look at me! You wanted to lead. This is what he comes to.
That's the thesis of the scene, possibly of Luthen's entire philosophy. Leadership in rebellion is not noble. It is a sequence of impossible moral compromises. Lying to people you love, accepting help from people you despise, valuing mission success over personal relationships, and making decisions that will haunt you. Vel wants command, wants to be an architect of resistance rather than merely a participant. Luthen is showing her what that costs. You don't get to be pure and effective simultaneously. You don't get to preserve your integrity and win. Rebellion, stripped of its heroic framing, is corrosive. It requires you to become someone you wouldn't respect in peacetime. This is where Andor diverges most sharply from the broader Star Wars mythology. The franchise has always celebrated rebellion as inherently righteous, treated the Rebel Alliance as morally superior to the Empire by virtue only of opposing it. But Luthen operates in the ethical territory of Lakar's spy fiction, the grey zones where George Smiley conducted his exhausting intelligence work, where Alec Lemus was used and discarded because his survival was incidental to mission success. Lakar rejected James Bond's glamorous fantasy in favour of bureaucratic moral exhaustion, and Andor does the same for Star Wars. There are no clean hands here. Luthen's rebellion requires becoming what you fight, using violence, deception, ruthlessness. It requires the same utilitarian calculus that justifies imperial atrocities, just pointed in a different direction. When Vel asks what to do if Cassian becomes a problem, Luthen's answer is immediate. Well, that's the advantage of renting him. He's disposable. The line is operationally sound and morally monstrous in equal measure. In covert operations, assets must be expendable, or the mission becomes hostage to individual survival. If you valued every operative's life equally with mission success, you'd never run any operations at all, because these operations risk lives. But accepting this logic means accepting that some people are worth less than others, that Cassian's life can be weighed against strategic objectives and found wanting. He's training Vel to think in terms of acceptable losses, and I don't mean Cassian, I mean her. This is the central moral question of Andor: how much of your humanity can you sacrifice before you become indistinguishable from the thing you're fighting? Luthen believes this is the kind of moral hand-wringing that people engage in when they're not serious about winning. His approach mirrors Cold War intelligence networks, MI6, CIA, KGB, where ideological commitment was preferred but not required. Mercenaries, defectors, opportunists were used when necessary and considered expendable when convenient. The French resistance debated whether to work with criminals and collaborators. The IRA fractured over questions of political compromise. I don't recall why the Judean People's Front and the People's Front of Judea fell out, but this kind of purity test plagues both resistance and left-wing politics throughout history. But Luthen knows purity is a luxury the rebellion cannot afford. He represents the pragmatist response. Winning is the only thing that matters. While this is happening, Cassian's eyes stray to the controls inside the ship. He's wondering, just for a moment, if he could simply vanish in this thing. The AI clocks it immediately and asks whether there's anything it can help him with, spoken politely but dripping with the implied threat of, "Yeah, try it, mate."
Something I can help you with?
Back outside, as always with Luthen, he structures the choice to ensure Vel arrives at the correct answer. Take him or call it off, he says, presenting a binary that technically offers agency while functionally eliminating real alternatives. Calling off the mission means admitting failure, wasting 5 months of prep. And what Luthen knows all too well is that Vel wants this. He already knows she won't be choosing to call it off. Luthen only deals in doors that open one way. Vel isn't fanatical. She's in the gravity well of zealotry, but she's not there yet. She's hungry. She's at that dangerous stage between belief and need where conviction starts to feel like oxygen. On top of that, 5 months of suffering and laser-focused preparation has fused her identity with the mission. If she pulled out now, she'd probably be traumatized on some level. What would she even be if she simply went home now? When he tells Vel she'll lie to her team about Cassian's origin, that she'll tell him it was always part of the plan, he's implicating her in his methods. He's reminding her that leadership means constantly deceiving people you respect, that command requires betraying your team's trust for strategic advantage. Whether he was actually planning on shutting them down is unclear. Without Cassian, it's obviously the right call though, so I think he probably does mean this. Then we hear a moment of undeniable truth from Luthen. This has to be a win, Vel. For once, we know what he's saying is true. We don't need to question this. This is make or break. With the risk involved when he went to get Cassian, we know he means this. At least 2 people on this mission know his face, and one, as we'll come to learn, knows exactly where to find him. If it fails, the rebellion will lose momentum. If they're captured, Luthen's going to be hunted down. He knows where to find his main collaborators. The stakes are existential. Vel's resistance ultimately collapses under the weight of strategic necessity. And then Cassian emerges from the ship, walking toward Luthen and Vel against the brutal, beautiful landscape. He's already compromised, erased himself through Razor and Alias, accepted money over meaning, entered a trap disguised as an opportunity. He's not joining the rebellion, he's being used by it, inserted as critical redundancy into a team that doesn't want him. And he walks towards 2 people who just agreed in a conversation he didn't hear that his life is disposable. What does it cost to fight the Empire? The question hangs over Aldhani like the mountains themselves, ancient, immovable, indifferent to human suffering. The answer is everything. Your identity scraped away with a razor, your integrity traded for operational advantage, your sense of meaning devalued by the discovery that sacrifice can be replaced with salary, your humanity slowly eroded by the acceptance that some people are tools and that tools can be discarded. The rebellion is as hard and beautiful as the landscape that shelters it, awe-inspiring in scope, unforgiving in its demands. Vel wants to lead, wants to be part of something larger than herself, Luthen is teaching her that larger than yourself means smaller than yourself, shrinking your moral universe until mission success is the only virtue that remains. Perhaps this is how rebellions often die from the inside, not defeated by the Empire but consumed by their own pragmatic ruthlessness. Transformed so completely by the logic of necessary evil that victory becomes indistinguishable from defeat. The show doesn't answer this question, it simply shows us Cassian walking towards his fate, Vel learning the price of winning, and Luthen orchestrating compromise with the precision of a man who's already sacrificed everything, including his peace of mind. The architecture of compromise is already complete. Luthen built it, Vel is learning to maintain it, and Cassian is being mortared into its foundations, one more necessary piece in a structure that will stand long after he's gone. This is how rebellions work. Someone builds the machine, someone learns to operate it, and others become the fuel. The only question is whether that machine is building something worth the human cost of running it. And that question, like the mountains, has no answer. Only wait. Chief Inspector Hein went off-world to reassure the Empire that Pre-Mor could manage its own affairs. He returns to find the Empire has decided to manage them for him. And Cyril Khan wanted order. Now he's meeting the real thing. We return to what looks like Hein's office from episode 1, but this time it more closely resembles a courtroom. At the desk sits Lieutenant Blevin, emissary of the real Empire. The last time we saw him, he was a small but polished figure at the ISB Roundtable, a cog in the immaculate white machinery of Imperial intelligence. Here he's a giant in a room that smells of failure, looking across at three men who've just realised they were never part of that machine after all. Sergeant Mosk stands ramrod straight, instinctively obedient. Chief Inspector Hein looks lost, still trying to figure out what meeting he's walked into. And Cyril Khan, the would-be model officer, is watching his life implode under the weight of the order he worshipped. Blevin's speech is a bureaucratic execution at its most elegant. You will relinquish any and all comlinks, weapons and scandocs. The language is dry, repetitive, beautifully impersonal. Each "you will" is a nail in the coffin of their autonomy. You will not return to your living quarters. You will hollow certify. You will not waste further Imperial time. It's a liturgy of administrative destruction. He's not only firing them, he's making them participate in their own termination through a series of bureaucratic genuflections. You can't even be fired quickly. You have to certify your firing, confirm your culpability, acknowledge your disgrace. Can we just pause for a moment and appreciate the fact that I don't think Hein even knows what's happened yet? I think that's hilarious. He was away somewhere burnishing Pre-Mor's reputation among Imperial security auditors while the farce was unfolding. He's come back, been summoned in here, and Blevin won't even let him read the report. Even funnier is the ever-talkative Mosk, who does not say a word, though he does raise his hand in a doomed attempt to. I tried to work out what he might want to say here, but it's probably funnier not knowing. As for Blevin, he's performing rhetorical overkill for his own amusement. He could just say you screwed up. Instead, he constructs these baroque insults, combined ingredients, full apex, and incredulous disaster. He's enjoying this. He's styling on them. This is what happens when a competent bureaucrat encounters spectacular incompetence. They take aesthetic pleasure in describing it. The real brilliance of the scene is how it turns authoritarian mimicry into tragedy. Pre-Mor security was the Empire's reflection in the dirty puddle, same instincts, cheaper uniforms. Their whole existence was based on imitation, the fantasy of being something powerful. That's what makes this moment so darkly satisfying. They wanted order, now they're getting it. Pre-Mor is being absorbed by the parent organism it always imitated. Andor treats fascism as a pyramid scheme. Everyone thinks they're near the top until the next tier eats them. Blevin lists their sins with relish. Idiocy, ineptitude, and total disengagement. It's the most cutting thing an Imperial bureaucrat could say. Not that they were disloyal, but that they were inefficient. Morality doesn't even come into it. Their crimes were managerial. This is where Andor's satire cuts deepest. Fascism in the real world often masquerades as competence, all straight lines and clean uniforms, What we're watching is the collapse of that illusion. The corporate tyrants who once strutted through Ferrix in perfect formation are now being dismantled by a better dressed brand of tyranny. When Blevin tells Khan you will not be replaced, his tone is merciful, but he's mocking him. It's a complete annihilation. The line hits Khan like a personal betrayal, not because he's lost status, but because he's lost purpose. He's the kind of man who mistakes obedience for identity, who builds his sense of self out of doing things the right way. Blevin's dismissal shows the system he worshipped has revealed it never even saw him. That's the shape of power in Andor, a pyramid of control that's always collapsing inward, each layer feeding the one above it. The corpos tried to climb it, instead they were turned into raw material. The system rewards obedience right up until it doesn't need you anymore. The Empire doesn't expand by conquest alone, it expands by absorption. Palpatine already did this to the Trade Federation and Techno-Union. The Nazis absorbed the brown shirts. Saruman was literally trying to imitate Sauron. The scene's comedy and its horror come from the same truth. Everyone here thought they were the Empire already. Mosk, Khan, Hein, they were playing dress-up fascists, pretending to hold the line between chaos and order, and now the real thing has arrived, wielding real authority. That's what makes Andor's depiction of authoritarianism so precise. It's not only cruelty for its own sake, it's about the quiet, grinding logic of hierarchy. There's always someone above you, they're not going to blame their boss, so they always think you're the problem. So Blevin doesn't need to raise a gun or even his voice, his language is enough. When he says you've rung the final bell on corporate independence, it's not just the end of Pre-Mor, it's the start of a new phase in the show's political anatomy. The Empire has stopped pretending it governs through proxies here, now it governs directly. And remember, this isn't just the Empire taking over Morlana 1, Pre-Mor's jurisdiction includes more than one planet, which means Ferrix itself is now under Imperial control, and they want to make an example of Ferrix. Ferrix proved you can stand against bullies. That is a dangerous bit of news to be spreading unchecked outside. Blevin obviously doesn't care that a resident mechanic shop worker was killed or that an old lady was roughed up. He doesn't technically care that several Pre-Mor employees died or that an expensive drop pod was destroyed. What he cares about is that the Empire has been embarrassed. The privatized governance model meant Pre-Mor were representing the Empire and they've just been made a joke of. In the background you can almost hear the pyramid shifting, one more layer sinking under the weight of its own perfect design. The Empire, like all systems of control, is forever consuming its imitators. Pre-Mor wanted to be the Empire. Now it is, just not in the way it hoped. If you're still watching this video, thank you. I just want to share a quick update on the channel's future. The current status is life support. If you're new and this is news to you, the reasons for it can be discovered in the channel future video I published recently. I'm just going to spend 2 or 3 minutes to update on progress, which is, not looking promising. And I'll finish off with a 3-minute clip of my very different Babylon 5 content, which is going up in my vault. No YouTube channel has even really started until it gets to 1,000 subs, and even that's looking dire. 6 weeks ago it dropped from around 10 a day to 1. For me to get to 1,000 subs will now be another 15 months, and 1,000 subs is nothing. I'll have had to stop long before that. Comparing it against a realistically achievable dream/stretch goal of 100,000 shows you the real scale of the problem. One thing this will mean is that I'm going to have to try a number of different projects, and if one of those hits and this still hasn't, I'll have no option but to put my time into that instead. As an aside, I think I might have invented a format. I've looked, can't find anything similar. Something that would take a full hour of TV and analyse it scene by scene to the point where the final analysis is almost double the length of the source material. Let me know if I'm wrong, I'd be interested to check out anything similar. Since this platform isn't going to treat the channel meritocratically, Patreon is the only way to save it and the Andor project. For context, I'm after 1,000 patrons in the next few months. Not considered a high number on Patreon, I don't think. Sadly, the launch was a flop to the point where I was considering deleting it out of embarrassment, but I'm not giving up that easily. While I still have time, I'm going to try and keep making the best content I can and keep making the case. Only you can make a difference here. It's clear the future of video content is going to be largely generated without human contributors that need paying. This is the last chance saloon for people like me who are trying a last-ditch attempt to build a channel before the AI wave wipes us out. So I'm not going to beg. I never wanted people to have to pay for my content anyway, but the fact is, this will be going away before long unless Patreon hits its target. If the pricing is wrong, if the rewards are wrong, tell me. I am hoping it's not just as simple as the world doesn't want this outside of a small handful of people, but I know that's a distinct possibility. Finally, it wasn't that much of a flop that no one signed up, so I wanted to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who has contributed in some way so far. As they already know, the Vel episode was cursed, it took over a week, I had to redo the whole thing 3 times, and in the end it was the people who'd let me know this means something to them that kept me pushing through. Thank you, early adopters. The Discord may be quiet, but I do believe it won't stay that way. I'll continue posting scene by scene on Patreon, and I'll be back here with the next few scenes when they're done. Today, I'll finish with a few snippets of a chat I had with my brother in 2014 about Babylon 5 Season 1. It's pretty different from my Andor stuff, and many hours of that will be going up in my Patreon vault. See ya!
Like, you will never get a television intro today where it goes, the name of the place is Babylon 5.
It can be a dangerous place.
It's... what is it? A place for wanderers, alien races, just like
vagabonds.
None of that wouldn't. That is, it's so cheesy, and you have the kind of the montage, all the heads, of the main actors. Like it's a very kind of time specific,
Yes,
era specific television show.
And Sinclair, apparently, this is really funny. Sinclair's age in season 1 is given as 39.
Right.
I'm nearly fucking 39. He's not 39. He's like 55.
10 years older, at least. Yeah.
And I actually love this speech so much that I have it memorized. I know you'll think that I could be reading it, but I actually do have this memorized. I love it. We have to stay here, and there's a simple reason why. Ask 10 different scientists about the environment, population control, genetics, and you'll get 10 different answers. But there's one thing every scientist on this planet agrees on. Whether it happens in 100 years or 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years, eventually our sun will grow cold and go out. When that happens, it won't just take us. It'll take Marilyn Monroe, and Lao Tzu, and Einstein, and Moroboto, and Buddy Holly, and Aristophanes. And all of this was for nothing. Unless we go to the stars.
I did, yeah, I do remember that actually, and I did really like that. And can I just say that your Crichton impression is fantastic? Yeah, so I reflexed against Garibaldi quite a lot.
Interesting.
Plus, he's got a really stupid hairline.
Fair enough. Right, the next episode, TKO. Fuck me, this is bad.
Oh, was this your worst episode?
God, this is a disgraced boxer comes to Babylon 5 to compete in the Muay Thai, an alien fighting match.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, an old friend visits Ivanova so she can mourn the loss of her father. Yeah, this was awful. If I remember rightly, there's a really shit boxing episode from Battlestar Galactica, isn't there?
But he does put on a voice that makes him sound an awful lot like Dr. Sanchez.
Yeah.
And it's such a stupid... No one has that voice in real life.
Yes, I know what you mean. Like speaking like this. You will listen to me. This is the first appearance of Centauri genitalia.
Yeah, the 6 tentacles. Whatever.
And what I found quite funny about this was I think they reused the prop from the brain-sucking squid thing that appeared in that earlier episode.
Yeah.
I think they've reused the prop for
Right.
Londo's tip.